issues, obviously, of trust and communication, just stuff that never ever goes on. We have fun challenging each other, surprising each other. People really think he is that kind of jerk because he does it so well.
In Costa Rica's warm waters, a beloved TV icon vanished. But what seemed like a tragic accident has now stirred questions. Was Malcom-Jamal Warner's death really what it appeared to be? Join us to unpack the truth surrounding his death. How Malcom-Jamal died. It was meant to be a peaceful getaway, just Malcom-Jamal Warner, his daughter, and the kind of quiet moments he rarely had during a life in the spotlight. The 54-year-old actor, best known for his role as Theo Huxtable on The Cosby Show, had carved out a space for himself away from the chaos of fame. On July 20, 2025, that sanctuary crumbled. That Sunday morning, Warner was vacationing on the Caribbean coast of Costa Rica, near Playa Cocles in the Lamman province, a breathtakingly beautiful but deceptively dangerous stretch of beach. Reports say the weather was clear, the waves gentle on the surface. Warner entered the water with his 8-year-old daughter. He had done this many times before, just a father and daughter enjoying the sea. But beneath the sunlit calm, danger was lurking. According to eyewitnesses and Costa Rican officials, a rip current, fast-moving, narrow channels of water pulled both of them away from the shore. These currents can move at speeds faster than an Olympic swimmer, and even experienced swimmers struggle to fight them. Warner and his daughter were caught in its grip before either could react. Playa Cocles is known for its postcard beauty, crystal blue water, lush jungle surroundings, and a relaxed surf town vibe, but it has a reputation among locals and seasoned surfers. The beach has limited lifeguard presence, and the shape of the seafloor creates unpredictable currents. Tourists are often unaware of these dangers. Riptides don't look like danger. They don't roar or crash. They slip beneath you, silent and sudden. A nearby surfer saw what was happening and rushed to help. He was able to pull the young girl to safety and immediately began CPR. Another beachgoer spotted Warner, unconscious and floating, and dragged him to shore. First responders from the Costa Rican Red Cross quickly arrived. They worked for 45 minutes to revive him, but it was too late. Warner was pronounced dead at the scene. The official autopsy by Costa Rica's Judicial Investigation Agency, OIJ, determined the cause of death as asphyxia by submersion, or drowning. There were no immediate signs of trauma or foul play, and the body was reportedly found with no indication of struggle beyond what might be expected in a drowning. The conclusion? A tragic, accidental death. Nothing more, nothing less. News of his passing swept through the entertainment industry like wildfire. Social media exploded with tributes. Fans, celebrities, former co-stars, all were stunned. To most, Warner wasn't just a former child star. He had evolved over the years into a respected director, poet, jazz musician, and speaker. He stayed out of tabloids, avoided scandals, and focused on craft, community, and family. He was also known to be deeply intentional in his lifestyle, a disciplined man, mindful of both physical and mental health. Warner often spoke about balance, meditation, and being present. He was a practicing vegan for years. He didn't drink heavily, avoided drugs, and led an extremely low-risk life. That, more than anything, was what made the news of his drowning feel off. His longtime friend, Lamman Rucker, who met Warner when they were both 13, called him more like a brother. In an emotional interview, he revealed that their families had planned to spend time together soon. Actor Malcolm Barrett shared, "He was one of the most grounded people I've ever met in this business. He didn't chase attention, he chased excellence." Authorities in Costa Rica moved quickly and transparently. The beach where Warner drowned was temporarily closed. Warning signs about rip currents were posted in multiple languages, and lifeguards increased their visibility. The Red Cross also confirmed they had responded swiftly and followed standard emergency procedures. Still, the public wasn't satisfied. Within hours of the official statement, murmurs of suspicion began to surface online. Not everyone was convinced that a man as physically capable of swimming, spiritually grounded, and cautious as Werner could have simply drowned. Reddit threads emerged. YouTube creators published speculative videos. Fans dug through old interviews, social media posts, and obscure podcast clips, trying to find meaning in what felt like senseless loss. Some noted that Werner had been unusually private in the months leading up to the trip. Others claimed he had canceled public appearances and stopped posting on social media with the same energy he once had. A few even suggested he had been under stress, worried, withdrawn, and preoccupied with something he never fully disclosed. What fueled the unease wasn't just Werner's fame, it was the timing, the circumstances, and the feeling that something just didn't add up. Some pointed to inconsistencies. How could a man who was known to be health-conscious and aware of his surroundings be so easily caught off guard by a rip current? Why were there no lifeguards already present on such a popular beach, especially during vacation season? Why was the incident reported and resolved so quickly with little follow-up? And then came the stories, unconfirmed, unverified, and often anonymous, of Werner feeling watched, of him working on a project that could expose powerful people, and of a disturbing voice memo he allegedly sent to a friend shortly before his death. Some fans claimed his mother didn't believe the drowning was accidental. Others even suggested that Werner had been silenced. At the center of these rumors lies one painful, simple truth. The official story may not be enough for everyone. To many, Werner's death is just another tragic example of nature's unpredictability. To others, it's the start of a deeper mystery, one filled with shadows, secrets, and questions no one seems eager to answer. In the immediate aftermath of Malcom-Jamal Werner's death, the incident seemed straightforward, an accidental drowning at a beach known for its treacherous currents. But the simplicity of that explanation didn't sit right with many of his fans, nor with some people reportedly close to him. What began as quiet unease rapidly snowballed into full-blown theories, stoked by a series of strange and troubling details that, for some, painted a far more sinister picture. The warning signs before his death. Perhaps the most persistent theory centers around a project Werner was allegedly working on before his death, a private documentary about his early years on The Cosby Show. According to online speculation, Werner had grown increasingly reflective about his time in the spotlight. He was no longer the bright-eyed teen actor simply following scripts. He had, over the years, become a seasoned performer, a spoken-word poet, a jazz musician, and a quietly political thinker. He was known to be thoughtful and principled, someone who preferred depth over drama. But in the final months of his life, some claim that Werner was documenting his own experiences behind the scenes of the show that made him famous. What made this alleged documentary explosive, at least in the eyes of theorists, was its potential connection to the wider controversies surrounding Bill Cosby. In 2018, Cosby was convicted of aggravated indecent assault, and dozens of women had come forward with allegations against him spanning decades. Though Cosby's legacy was irreparably damaged, many of his former co-stars stayed silent, Werner among them. For years, he declined to make any strong public statements about Cosby, saying only that he needed time to process the fallout. But what if he was processing in private? According to unconfirmed reports circulating online, Werner had begun recording voice memos, journal entries, and even video logs recounting things he allegedly witnessed or experienced during his time on set. Some anonymous sources claim that these recordings were meant for a future expose, possibly a documentary he intended to release on his own terms, far from the constraints of Hollywood PR or studio contracts. It's here that the theory takes a darker turn. Roughly 2 days before his death, Werner's Los Angeles home was reportedly broken into. This detail was not widely reported in the press, but emerged through online forums, fringe blogs, and unverified fan accounts. The burglars didn't take jewelry or cash, nor did they damage expensive electronics. According to those accounts, the only things stolen were Warner's laptops, hard drives, and private documents, items that, if the documentary theory is true, may have contained the bulk of his research or recordings. There are further claims that Warner confided in a close friend about his fears in the weeks leading up to his trip to Costa Rica. In a now viral video clip circulating on YouTube and TikTok, a speaker who claims to be an acquaintance of Warner's shares a chilling voicemail that was allegedly sent just days before the actor's death. In the message, Warner supposedly says something to the effect of being watched, and anything happening to him is not accidental. Whether the voice in the recording truly belongs to Warner is a point of heated debate. Some audio experts claim the voice timbre is too close to be a fake, while skeptics argue that no verifiable metadata or timestamps have ever been released to authenticate the recording. The clip continues to circulate without context, gaining more traction each time another layer of speculation is added. Still, the idea that Warner felt endangered isn't entirely dismissed by those who knew him well. Several of his peers in the entertainment industry, while stopping short of endorsing any specific theory, have hinted at Warner's tendency to keep things private. Malcolm didn't talk much about his fears, one fellow actor noted in an anonymous interview. But when he did, it was serious. If he thought something was wrong, he wouldn't have imagined it. Fueling the conspiracies further is the timing and location of his death. Why Costa Rica? Why now? While many celebrities travel to Central America for vacation, theorists argue that such a remote location would make it easier to stage or conceal something more nefarious. Some suggest the drowning was too clean, too convenient, and that someone took advantage of the dangerous currents to make an accident look real. Others focus on the autopsy, which reportedly indicated bruising on Warner's wrists and ribs. While authorities have publicly attributed these to impact injuries from the surf or resuscitation efforts, skeptics claim they're consistent with signs of a struggle. These suspicions were only intensified when Warner's mother, in a brief but emotional statement, was quoted as saying, "I don't believe it was just the water." Though she didn't elaborate further, her words were enough to give theorists a sense of validation. Many of these claims remain unverified. Major media outlets have not reported on the supposed break-in, and no police report has been made public. Similarly, the voice memo and the existence of a documentary remain in the realm of conjecture. But in the court of public opinion, especially in online spaces where distrust of Hollywood is already sky-high, these puzzle pieces fit too perfectly to ignore. And then there's the broader cultural backdrop, the history of whistleblowers and truth-tellers meeting untimely ends. In recent years, the entertainment industry has been scrutinized for its alleged silencing of individuals who knew too much or threatened to pull back the curtain. Whether it's through accidents, overdoses, or mysterious disappearances, the deaths of celebrities are often steeped in ambiguity. For Warner's most devoted fans, this fits a pattern all too familiar. To some, Warner's death is still exactly what authorities said it was, a heartbreaking accident caused by the merciless tides of nature. But for others, it marks the latest in a string of high-profile deaths that feel too clean, too quiet, and too convenient. And if Warner really did know something, if he really was working on something that powerful, then maybe, just maybe, this story isn't over yet. Theories behind his death. As the official reports continued to emphasize accidental drowning as the cause of death, a quiet storm began brewing. This time, not among online theorists, but from those closest to Malcom-Jamal Warner. Chief among them was his mother, Pamela Warner, who, according to several circulating accounts, never fully accepted the explanation she was given. It started with the autopsy. Though no full public report has been released by Costa Rican authorities, alleged excerpts from the preliminary findings leaked online just days after his death. One phrase stuck out to many: contusions consistent with restraint on the wrists and signs of trauma to the rib cage. That one sentence, unverified as it was, instantly transformed public perception. What was framed as a tragic accident now appeared, to some, as a possible cover-up. Pamela Warner, though not speaking to the press directly, was reportedly deeply unsettled by the inconsistencies in the narrative. Friends close to the family allegedly told online outlets that she questioned how a man as physically fit as her son, who swam regularly and had no known heart issues, could drown in knee-high surf. "It doesn't add up," one family associate allegedly said, especially not after what happened at his house. Adding to the mystery was Warner's mental state in the weeks leading up to the trip. Those who had seen him said he was focused, sharp, and oddly urgent. A producer he'd worked with briefly in 2024 told a niche podcast that Warner was on a mission to document everything. He wanted to tell his truth. But the truth about what? Many have pointed back to his years on The Cosby Show, a program once hailed as a beacon of black excellence on television, but one that has since been heavily shadowed by Bill Cosby's criminal history. Though Warner always approached the subject diplomatically in interviews, some now believe he had long been carrying unspoken burdens related to that period. The rumored documentary he was working on allegedly was said to explore not just his personal journey, but the complex power dynamics behind the scenes of the show. Some anonymous sources claimed it included interviews with former crew members and off-record testimonials from individuals connected to other 80s sitcoms as well. If true, it would have implicated not just Cosby, but a broader industry culture that thrived on silence and complicity. What's more disturbing is the fact that Warner knew he might not live to see the documentary completed. In addition to the alleged voice note in which he said, "If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident," another source claimed Warner told them he feared they were trying to erase the past by erasing the people who remember it. Of course, these claims remain largely unverified. Skeptics argue that none of the so-called evidence has been confirmed by authorities or Malcolm's estate. They point out that a grieving mother may be more susceptible to doubts, especially when dealing with such a sudden and public loss. Some even say these theories are exploiting tragedy. But the people who believe otherwise remain vocal, and they're not going away. In fact, after Warner's funeral, a hashtag began trending, #JusticeForMalcolm. It was used by both fans and a few lesser-known public figures who insisted that accident was the wrong word. Some online activists began calling for an independent investigation into his death, demanding U.S. authorities get involved. Believers point to a pattern of strange coincidences, a robbery with no clear motive, a planned documentary on one of TV's most controversial figures, a man saying he feared for his life and then dying under unclear circumstances, and a mother refusing to accept what she's been told. They say silence can be louder than denial. While the mainstream media continues to cover Warner's death with caution, YouTube channels, podcasts, and Reddit threads remain ablaze with speculation. Some go even further, tying his death to a string of other Hollywood figures who died under unusual circumstances while working on personal projects. Names like Isaac Kappy, Stanley Kubrick, and Brittany Murphy are often referenced in the same breath, forming a web of half-fact, half-fantasy that refuses to be dismissed entirely. Even the nature of the robbery at his LA home days before his Costa Rica trip raises more questions than answers. Why were only documents and hard drives taken while valuables were left untouched? Was it a message, a warning, or a cleanup? Some fans believe this was the final attempt to prevent Warner's documentary from ever seeing the light of day. And if so, they ask, who had that much to lose? Former child stars, many of whom remain tight-lipped, were suddenly tagged in tweets and messages from fans demanding transparency. A few posted cryptic messages about honoring truth and not being afraid anymore. One former sitcom actor, now retired, posted an old picture with Warner captioned simply, "He had more courage than they'll ever admit." The post was taken down hours later. There's also been renewed scrutiny around The Cosby Show's production years. In this light, Warner's death and his unfinished project become more than an isolated incident. They become a symbolic crack in a once impenetrable wall of nostalgia. A generation that grew up watching him now questions what was really happening behind the scenes. Still, others urge caution. Not every tragic death is part of a sinister web, they say. To inject theories into every celebrity, passing risks blurring the line between justice and paranoia. The danger, as one cultural critic warned, is that we start to believe everything except the truth. But for those who loved Warner, who saw him not just as Theo Huxtable, but as a thoughtful, evolving artist trying to reclaim his voice, silence simply won't suffice. And maybe that's why the theories continue to spread. Because even in the absence of definitive proof, the story feels unfinished, like a book with pages torn out. A voice cut off mid-sentence. A truth waiting to be told. Public reaction. The news of Malcom-Jamal Warner's untimely death didn't just ripple through Hollywood. It detonated a firestorm across the internet, stirring grief, outrage, and a tidal wave of speculation. Within hours of the announcement, the hashtag #JusticeForMalcolm was trending worldwide. Fans were devastated, yes, but many were also skeptical and angry. Because to them, this didn't feel like an accident. It felt like a message. Online forums lit up with theories, not just whispers, but long, obsessive threads connecting dots between the alleged drowning, the stolen computers, and a cryptic voice memo Malcolm had supposedly sent to a close friend just days before his death. People began reposting screenshots of the alleged message. Some even dug up old interviews where Malcolm hinted at discomfort with certain figures from his past, particularly surrounding his time on The Cosby Show. The grief felt personal. This wasn't just another celebrity gone too soon. To many, Malcolm represented a rare kind of legacy, one built not on scandals, but on quiet resilience. His portrayal of Theo Huxtable was etched into the hearts of millions. For fans who grew up watching him, his death wasn't just sad, it was suspicious. One tweet read, "The man was making a documentary about what happened behind the scenes of The Cosby Show. Then suddenly, he drowns. Days after his house was broken into and only files were taken. Y'all really believe this was an accident?" As speculation swelled, the media's response only made things worse. Major outlets initially reported his cause of death as accidental drowning, citing preliminary autopsy results. But when information that Malcolm had suffered bruising on his wrists and ribs, the public's fury escalated. Many believed the bruises indicated a struggle, something far more sinister than an innocent accident. To make matters worse, several mainstream media channels began walking back earlier details. The autopsy report, once available online, suddenly became incomplete. News clips that had been broadcast were removed from YouTube and replaced with edited versions. Theorists saw this as evidence of a cover-up. "They're erasing the truth in real time," said one popular YouTuber in a video titled, "Why They're Hiding Malcolm's Real Cause of Death." The backlash wasn't limited to social media. Several black cultural commentators weighed in. Journalists and activists went viral for saying the entertainment industry has a pattern and you can't keep dismissing these deaths as coincidental. When someone speaks up or is about to speak up, something always happens. We've seen this too many times. We're not paranoid, we're awake. Podcasts, blogs, and even independent documentaries started springing up in the weeks following his death. One miniseries titled The Malcolm Files attempted to reconstruct the final days of his life using testimonies, alleged text messages, and interviews with anonymous sources. Though speculative, the series garnered millions of views and further cemented the belief that Warner's death was not as simple as the headlines claimed. Former co-stars stayed largely silent, at least at first, but fans began calling them out. "Where's the outrage from the people who knew him best?" one tweet asked, tagging several former Cosby Show actors. "Why is everyone pretending this isn't suspicious?" Eventually, a few voices did speak up. A former child actor who had worked with Malcolm on a short-lived sitcom years ago tweeted, "He was worried. He told me in confidence months ago that he was working on something powerful, something that could change how people saw the 80s sitcom era forever. He said he had enemies, but didn't think this would happen." His tweet was quickly deleted, but not before screenshots spread like wildfire. The silence from Hollywood only added to the unease. The more public figures avoided talking about the case, the more convinced people became that something had been covered up. For Malcolm's mother, the grief was too raw to ignore. She gave a teary comment where she said, "My son was strong, he was healthy, and he was cautious. He didn't just go jumping into water." She said she doesn't care what they say. She knows my son. This wasn't no accident. That quote, heartbroken and defiant, was replayed across dozens of podcasts and independent media channels. To many, it was the final confirmation that they weren't crazy for doubting the official story. As days turned into weeks and memorials turned into rallies, the demand for answers only grew louder. Petitions began circulating, calling for a federal investigation into Malcolm's death. Some fans even reached out to Malcolm's close friends and former colleagues, begging them to release any information he may have shared before his passing. A second autopsy was requested, but no results were made public. Still, for many, the truth didn't lie in formal reports. It lived in the inconsistencies, in the timing, in the missing files, in the silence of those who should have been screaming. Malcom-Jamal Warner's death, whether an accident or not, had become something bigger than a tragedy. It had become a symbol of what it means to question power, to confront the past, and to speak truth when it's dangerous to do so. And whether he was silenced or simply gone too soon, one thing was clear: the world wasn't done hearing his story.